Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got two games here for you guys on Monday night as these playoffs roll on. We are going to be taking a look at a couple of best bets from both of us from both of these games. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We've also got a player props video for you with a couple of player props specifically for you guys as well. Also want you to head to thelines.com. You can check out all the great written content we have up there. We're throwing the picks up there on the site these days, and we have the odds finder tool up there. You can make sure that you're getting the best odds available to you from all of these U.S. sports books giving us bets in this NBA playoffs. Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first pick from one of these two games. We got Sac and Golden State, and obviously the other game in the East, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Nets.
Yeah, it's the Warriors to win, and the spread is -1.5, flipped the other way here because the expectation is that they will be able to even this series, that they'll show their championship medal and figure out a way to beat the Kings. And they were about to beat them and really actually would have beaten them if Andrew Wiggins had connected on a corner three and give him some slack because it's his first game since February 13th and only 28 minutes off the bench. He's only going to ramp up here as he gets his feet under him. Gary Payton has only played 7 games back with the Warriors. He had 20 off the bench. Once he gets his feet under him in this series, that's going to be a huge deal as a body to throw it to Aaron Fox, who was absolutely clutch. And really, it was always like an either-or situation with the Kings. Like, you come into the most raucous arena, this rabid fan base that hasn't had a championship in, a playoff appearance in 17 years, and they're either going to get tight and struggle, or they're going to just, feed off that energy and get the win. And Fox, we should have known, Mr. Clutch, was not going to let up. Malik Monk apparently is about that smoke too. But I see a little bit of regression coming from him. 32 off the bench, along with Trey Lyles shooting like 67% for 50 points off the bench. I don't see that happening to that extent again for those two guys. I think the Kings have a huge disadvantage in terms of that second unit, especially if Wiggs is going to come off the bench again, or DiVincenzo kind of rotates that way. The Warriors have more depth there. And the trouble stat is you gave up 31 assists to Golden State, and that's what they do in wins. They average actually 32 assists this season versus 27.5 in losses. And Golden State getting out-rebounded, giving up 17 O-reads, that is a problem, but they were able to still limit Domantas Sabonis very well. Draymond leading that charge, limited the Kings to a poor assist-to-turnover ratio. I do think that's sustainable. And look, if it comes down to it, I want Steph Curry. I want to bet on Steph Curry in the playoffs, especially after a loss, which we saw last year. Every time, basically comes back with a great performance, and looked just absolutely spry in game one, just absolutely unguardable. The Kings are actually one of the best teams guarding point guards between Fox and Davion Mitchell, and they still couldn't do anything with him. He's just doing his thing, just hitting these impossible threes. And moving really well too. If they're going to try to chase him off the line, he's still going to get into the lane. He's still going to finish, and the Warriors are going to play off that. And really, I think if we see more of the Wiggins we saw last year in his second game back here, his last 4 against the Kings, he did average 23 a game, shooting 53%. Draymond, his last 8 against the Kings, is a +90 with a 108 defensive rating. I do think he will continue to give Sabonis some trouble there. And other than Fox, I just don't have a ton of faith in these Kings guys to continue to support him. And I just think that the slightly lower energy that the Warriors are going to clamp down, because I think they're going to play better defense. I do kind of lean under as well. But I'm just thinking Warriors -1, -1.5, where it's at right now. That's a nice conservative line, or not really a line at all, to take the champs to bounce back and get into the series.
It all makes sense. I'm definitely not on board with betting against Steph Curry in the playoffs right now too much. But the problem is you could still pick against him, and I think the Kings could still win. But I would agree that this is more of a do or die game that they're definitely going to need. I don't know how much of these road issues really come into play. I mean, I faded Clay in the first game just because the 23.5 points was too high. I mean, you didn't get the 22.5 that was available in some spots either. Poor shooting inside the 3-point line really was the problem there. And really, I think what it comes down to, for this bet on the Warriors is like, how are they sort of constructing offense versus defense in terms of the lineups that they put out there when they don't have when they do put out, say, like GP2, for instance, who's the only guy who really had any kind of success guarding De'Aaron Fox, then they're really suffering in terms of offense. They're giving up a lot there when they need to score at least 120 points probably to beat this Kings team, unless they can figure something else out that nobody else has really this season in terms of stopping the Kings from getting above 120 points while they're playing at home. So I think in the playoffs it's going to tighten up for sure, and eventually we'll probably stop seeing a bit smaller totals here than 246 or 49 or whatever that first game was moving forward. And I think that does play into the Dubs' hands as well. So as this series continues and the longer that it goes, continue to give the slight edge to the Warriors for being able to kind of grind that out. And this is going to be a huge game for them. Not that this is going to be too big of a grinded out game, but it is, sort of the first test of one night off, another game in the playoffs. You don't have the same level of hype that you probably had coming into Golden One Center there in the first game. And there's going to be a little bit more of a letdown there. How well do they keep that intensity and that momentum up? And then also the game planning between Mike Brown and Steve Kerr is going to be super interesting to watch. So I like the Dubs in this game as well when you've got them as, a caged animal with their back against the wall. So I'm going to go to my first pick here, Nate, and talk about the other game for a minute. And it's a game that I feel a little bit less sure about than this one when I'm looking at it, other than Philly's going to win. I'm pretty sure. I don't know how they lose at home in this game. Mo, for those of you who follow along in the Discord, did go Nets plus 10, and what he said was a nose pincher of a bet, which I would agree with, as I don't necessarily want to have to sweat that out. But I could see there being a little bit of regression for Philly potentially. I mean, I don't know how they regress much more on defense, considering how much they gave up there to the Nets in terms of efficiencies in that first game. I know the Nets only ended with 102 offensive rating, but they shot 45% from deep, and that will keep them around enough. But I'm more focused here, Nate, on this pick with Philadelphia's offense and just continuing to ride that against a Nets team that it's got good players at certain positions on defense, but it does not have the weapons to handle Joel Embiid, frankly. And Joel, we saw obviously score fewer points than maybe his prop was. Definitely, he only got to 26 in that game. He's actually failed to get above 27 in his last, except for one time in his last 4 against the Nets. So that I don't know that they're necessarily doing much right except for double teaming the crap out of him. But that led the Philadelphia 76ers to have wide open threes and score, hit 48.8% of their 3-pointers in that game, basically making half the threes that they took, hitting 21 of them. And I think there's, reason to believe there won't be quite as many points total in this game. But I just can't see a world where, with this team playing the way that they are right now on offense, especially for the 76ers, that they don't get 113 points against this team because of what they can do down low. They only had 16 free throw attempts. So, if you want to say they're not going to hit, as many threes, they're not going to shoot 50% from deep, but they're still likely to shoot close to 40. Maybe you take away 3 or 4 of those threes and you add 10 free throws that they didn't get, because they averaged 26 of those a game in the regular season. They only had 16 in this one. So you got to expect a bit more of positive regression from their ability to get to the line if, they're going to have to sell out a bit and not just let guys shoot wide open threes. And that will take some of the pressure off Joel. Maybe they keep it on him, and that's fine. And even if, once again, they do regress a bit down from those threes, they're still taking, if they're going to be taking 45 of them again, the way that they have been, then I think that there's good reason to believe that even they hit 18 of them and get to the free throw line a few more times, that they're still getting close to 120 each time in this series. I don't think that Vegas is correctly dropping these totals nearly as much as they have been, or near as much as they should in this one specifically, all the way down to 214. It's kind of a Lee Corso not so fast, my friends, when you look at the overall total, thinking, oh, well, there's been 3 of the last 4 games that these teams have played have gone over this total for sure by at least 5 or 6 points. there's not that many great use cases, considering that like there were a few games that were just weird. It was either the old Nets team with KD and Kyrie, or it was, not necessarily anybody playing for everybody playing for each of these two teams when they met in the regular season. But I think you get scared looking at some of these lower totals you've seen in the past. At the same time, I think there is reason to believe that while maybe this game will be closer to like 218 rather than, the 222 or so that it was last game, I still think that the 113 points that the 76ers need is pretty easy to come by for them at home, where they've just been scoring a ton of points.
Yeah, they average 116 at home since the start of February, so it's not unheard of. And Brooklyn for a while was really struggling to guard the paint. Claxton has done a slightly better job, and I think they were just trying to get the ball out of Embiid's hands in game one. Didn't really work, like you said, with the barrage of threes. So maybe now they switch to that other mode where they're like, all right, let's see if Embiid gets 50 and we can just clamp down on everybody else. But that makes James Harden really the X factor. And I mean, he looked good. He's trying to dispel this playoff narrative. He had 7 threes in game one and dimed out 13 assists. So, I mean, if he's cooking like that, there's no way the Sixers are going to score under like 118. Probably wouldn't mind even the alternate total. I do like over in total for the game because, like Mo, I think the Nets are going to find a way to score enough and hang around in this one and make it interesting at least. And I think it will be with their offense attacking those vulnerable Sixers guards that they're going to start Maxey again, right? So it's just basically the same pick here, but we're looking at a same game parlay with the Warriors win if you want to juice it up. And Steph. So Warriors on that spread is -1.5. Steph 25 points. Steph 4 threes. Draymond 8 assists. Gets you about plus 330. You could go a little higher, get Steph 30 points, whatever. But I think you want to play it safe here because this is what Steph is expected to do in the spot in the playoffs after a loss. You look at his last after a loss last season, 5 out of 6 times, he's definitely going over this. He's averaging 32 points per game, 5 threes per game last playoffs. The exception was a Game 6 closeout in Dallas, which was closeout Clay. Game 6 Clay, Steph just let him go. But this has been his matchup against the Kings, where obviously we talked about how good he looked in Game 1. His last 12 against the Kings, he's only gone under 25 points once. That was a blowout at home. He's hitting 6 threes at 47%. He is a plus 185. He has gone under 4 threes twice this season. But, one of those was April 7th when Sacramento rested everybody. The other was, again, a night where Clay had a good game, where Wiggins had it going. Steph goes 3 for 9 from 3, but he still had 27 points. He's scoring inside and out against this team. It was 6 days after he torched the Kings for 47. So, obviously, less worried about that. Maybe you're more worried about Draymond because assists can be kind of fickle. But look, sacks since the All-Star break, giving up the second most assists per game, 5th worst three-point defense. They have the 28th defensive rating at home, and they're really good in transition D, which, I guess makes you worry that Draymond's not going to get those assists in transition, but it makes me think that they're really, really bad in half-court D. And as the Kings, you talk about Steve Kerr making adjustments, that the Kings are probably not going to be as experienced, as capable of making adjustments based on their experience in the playoffs and still being able to limit this Warriors offense in the half-court. So Dre, after a playoff loss last year, averaged 8 rebounds and 8 assists even. And that's against Boston, Dallas, and Memphis, teams that finished 1st, 6th, 16th in assists allowed last season. So those are much tougher matchups, much slower, bogged down games. I think in a matchup with the Kings, that's got a 240 total. I do feel good enough about Draymond getting 8 assists after he had 11 in game 1 and only shot the ball 5 times. He's not looking to shoot. He is the facilitator for this offense.
Yeah, for sure. Everything you're saying really is the same type of game theory that I see for this one in terms of Draymond continuing to have to do everything else. He's going to have to continue to box out Sabonis, which obviously Sabonis got 16 boards last time, limited his points a bit more, and Looney was definitely the primary defender on Sabonis with a lot of help from Draymond playing his normal sort of free safety on defense. And I think, for Steph, I'll just jump right into my next pick because it's kind of similar in some ways that, the theory here is Steph and De'Aaron Fox to combine for 59.5 points in this one. And we were both looking at this one, and I think it's an awesome bet in terms of, the money that you're getting back here on DraftKings at even money for them to get 60 points combined, 68 from obviously last time. And I think these guys continue to be the sort of drivers of these teams. Sabonis is going to continue to have trouble scoring, in my opinion, when you are going to throw bodies like Looney and Draymond at him for the amount of time that they both played, which was both well over 30 minutes. Draymond got 37 there, and then 34 rather, and then Looney got 32, which for a big lumbering center is a lot of points, but he's got to be out there, a lot of minutes, but he's got to be out there when Sabonis is. At any rate, the reason I like these 2 point guards so much is because there's nobody to stop Fox. I mean, Wiggins was out there for a bunch on him. Really, the main defenders on Fox are going to be Wiggins, mostly Gary Payton Jr., and then they throw some, DiVincenzo out there on him as well, but he only got 20 minutes or so. And Klay Thompson tried to guard him like 3 different times, and I think there was 3 different slippages or just some form of like, ooh, this is not going to work anymore. It's not the same Klay after ACLs and ankles and everything. Like, he's not the same defender, even though he's long and much taller than Fox, really only a couple inches taller than Fox. He doesn't have the quickness. And I think we're all really highly aware now that De'Aaron Fox is an all-star. You can't just put a throwaway defender on him and not expect him to go off for 30. And one of the, a couple things going on there for the Dubs. Obviously, it's still road defense. And I believe in what I saw during the regular season will continue to a degree at times for this Dubs team on the road. And that's why it's hard for me to believe in them as much as other teams, other people seem to, that they have it in them to go back to the championship this year. Either way, that just means there's going to be more Steph carrying them, right? So what you keeping it to Fox for a minute, he's going to continue to put the pressure on and put those points on, those fast break points. He even had a lot of second chance points in this last game, 7 of them, which was most on the team, partly because Sabonis is getting double teamed there. And I think De'Aaron Fox knows that if he's being guarded by somebody like GP2, like Dante DiVincenzo, or God forbid, Steph Curry, then he's going to be able to crash those boards, be longer and more athletic than those guys, and be able to get above them for some clear lanes that should be there while those guys are trying to box out the bigs for Sacramento so much, who is really, really good on the offensive glass, and did still manage to get a good amount of second chance points and outscore the Dubs 60-44 in the paint, which is another problem when you're trying to guard De'Aaron Fox, who gets either his points from a really, really nice mid-game stroke that he's got now, because he's only putting up three-point attempts a game. But it's that mid-range stroke that's really the reason he upped his points so much this season, and then getting all the way to the rim when you try to take that away from him. So I continue to like the points for him. I don't need to tell everybody here, hopefully, why Steph Curry is probably going to get 30 points again. I continue to not really love the matchup for Klay Thompson. If you saw how he got his points in this game, it was just by being wide open on 3. And 2 of those were in transition, which you really have to rely on for him as well. So I think he can get the 3s. I'm not really trying to continue to take Klay unders all series or anything like that necessarily. It is at the same prop, but I think his sort of the ability for the Kings to defend the shooting guard position much more so than De'Aaron Fox, than point guard, and really the type of point guard that De'Aaron Fox is in terms of long, taller than all these other guards like GP2 or Dante DiVincenzo that want to guard him, but just as quick, if not quicker, than both those guys as well. He's a huge matchup problem for them, and part of the reason that the Dubs gave up so many points to opposing point guards this season, and part of the reason that De'Aaron Fox has 26 points a game in his last 5 versus the Dubs in the regular season, including this one where he scored 38 with that huge usage rate of about 29%. That's not going to go down, and he's not going to get any fewer minutes as he's too important to this team. So 60 points between the 2 of them for even money. I like it, which I guess I'm saying I like overs for both of them, honestly, anyway.
Yeah, but it could be kind of uneven. But either way, I mean, you saw how they fed off each other in game 1. And that's something to look at in playoffs, is if you're going to at times try to guard each other, but you're going to get tired doing that. And then both stars are going to be able to do their thing on offense because they're facing a tired defender, which we just saw with Kawhi and KD last night too. Both of them getting over 60 combined. I think that I mean, I said be conservative with Steph to go over 25 points. I would not be surprised if he scores like 36 though. And then Fox only needs to get you 25-ish, which he's been averaging against the Warriors in the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and that's part of the game theory here is they need GP2 on the floor in order to guard Fox. No one else can do it nearly as well as him. He's the only guy who guarded him out there. He guarded him for the most amount of time as the primary defender in the time that GP2 was out there, which was about 20 minutes or so. He still guarded De'Aaron Fox and held him to 0 points when he was the main defender on him for about 3 minutes in that game. The problem is we'll see. I don't know about the problem, but we'll see what Steve Kerr decides to do in terms of playing GP2 a few more minutes in lieu of, I mean, Klay got 37 and shot 42% from the field. I know it's Klay Thompson, but DiVincenzo got 20 minutes. He's definitely better on offense than GP2 as well. But if Gary Payton's the only guy that can guard Fox, then maybe you start to look at, if that's the case in this game, maybe we start to consider some more unders if there's going to be fewer, less scoring on the floor for the Dubs because they want to be able to guard a little bit better as well on the perimeter against guys like De'Aaron Fox. But either way, in this one, 60 points still feels like a really good bet for those guys. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Check out the other video we have up for you on this Monday night slate with the player props as well. Until we see you next, happy betting.